Hey everybody, welcome back to Sip&Talk. I'm Joe. And as always, I'm ready to dive into some seriously juicy info with you all today. It's like we're mixing up a knowledge cocktail here. Strong stuff, but oh, so smooth going down.
And I'm Sunny, your friendly neighborhood fact checker. I'll make sure we get all the ingredients right. Speaking of mixing things up, you know it's always a good blend? Travel whiskey and discovering awesome new things. You have to check out our friend Mickey's YouTube channel, Mickey to Life.
Yeah, Mickey's the best. He's always got something cool going on. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Honestly, if you really want to know what a society is, like secretly terrified of, you shouldn't be looking at their evening news.
No, absolutely not. The news is way too curated.
Right. You have to look at their streaming queues. You have to look at what hits #1 at the box office on, a random Friday night.
Because that is where the real truth is.
Exactly. So today, we are basically hacking the algorithm of the global collective unconscious. Welcome to a brand new deep dive on Sip and Talk. Hello to you, our dedicated Sip and Talkers tuning in right now.
Yeah, welcome everyone. We are so glad you're here.
Whether you're like driving on your commute, washing the dishes, maybe just taking a walk, get ready. Because today we are unpacking something just absolutely mind-bending.
It really is. The scope of this is huge.
It's massive. We are mapping the universal social anxieties of the world's 6 largest regions directly against their blockbuster entertainment tropes.
Yeah, and it's a phenomenal undertaking. The whole premise comes from this concept that's currently floating around, like the tech and sociology spaces right now.
The Silicon Valley concept, right?
Right, exactly. The core idea is basically this. The entertainment industry has evolved into this ultimate diagnostic tool for societal pathology.
Wow, okay, societal pathology. That sounds intense.
I mean, it is. It's literally the algorithm of our collective unconscious. So the box office and the streaming platforms, they act as this really ruthless mirror.
Because they track every single click, every rewatch.
Exactly. Whatever you or, your neighbor or your entire society is actively suppressing or fearing or even desperately desiring in real life, the algorithm detects it. And then it just feeds it right back to you in high definition.
So wait, we're talking about a direct relationship between real-life deficits and on-screen compensation, like a 1-to-1 ratio.
Precisely. If a society lacks something structurally, whether that's justice or community or agency or just wealth, they will binge watch a hyper-exaggerated version of it on their screens.
It's wild to think about. To build this out, we are looking at a ton of demographic and social psychology data from really authoritative publications. Things like Bloomberg, The Economist, long-term observation stuff.
Yeah, really solid foundational data.
But hey, just to set the ground rules for you listening today, our discussion is an objective, cross-cultural, sociological analysis.
Right. We always try to keep it down the middle.
Always. We are not here to judge or criticize or take political sides regarding any nation or group. Left-wing, right-wing, whatever. We are just impartially reporting on what the data shows. We're simply observing the mechanics of human nature.
Yeah, we are basically looking at the mechanics of coping. Think of it this way. When you sit down and turn on your TV after just an exhausting week, you aren't just looking for a good story.
No, I'm usually looking to shut my brain off, honestly.
Well, you think you are, but really you're stepping into a global group therapy session.
Oh, wow. Binge watching is global group therapy. Love that.
It's true. And depending on your geographical and cultural coordinates, the specific therapy you require looks vastly different.
Okay, let's walk right into that first therapy room then. We are starting in the Asian sphere, specifically looking at China. And we are categorizing this as the wolf nature revenge algorithm.
That is such a perfect name for it.
Right. Because if you look at the viral short dramas right now, like those vertical web series you see on social media or the massive web novels, the formula is so rigid.
It really is a science at this point.
It totally is. The protagonist always starts at the absolute bottom of the food chain, like rock bottom. They are humiliated by these elitist in-laws, or they get bullied by neighborhood authorities.
Like the Qingwan, the urban management officials?
Yes, exactly. Or they just get publicly stepped on by these arrogant, untouchable rich kids.
And that humiliation phase is crucial. It is designed to be agonizingly drawn out.
Oh, it's torturous.
Yeah.
As a viewer, your blood is literally boiling. You feel the injustice so viscerally, like you want to jump through the screen.
Right, they push you right to the edge.
But then, right at the breaking point, the protagonist's true identity is revealed.
Boom.
Yeah, they aren't just some poor delivery driver. Turns out They are an undercover god of war, or like the hidden heir to a trillion-dollar conglomerate.
And then the tonal shift is incredible.
It's a torrential downpour of immediate, disproportionate, face-slapping revenge against every single person who slighted them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not about taking them to court. It's about destroying their entire bloodline.
Exactly. And to understand the mechanics of why this specific narrative is so intoxicating, we really have to look at the underlying social architecture there. We have to talk about guangxi.
Guangxi, I've heard that term. That's about connections, right?
Yeah, broadly speaking, in many Western societies, networking is just a tool. But in societies with rigid, thousands of years old social hierarchies, guangxi, which roughly translates to interpersonal connections and reciprocal obligations, is a parallel currency.
So it's not just who you know, it's the actual system.
It is the operating system of the society. When you combine really high power distance with a heavy reliance on guangxi, the grassroots individual faces an incredibly steep, almost frictionless wall when trying to seek systemic justice.
Right, because if you are just an ordinary worker and you get wronged by someone with deep pockets or really strong political ties, the normal channels for grievances, like the courts, they might feel entirely inaccessible to you.
Exactly. The game feels completely rigged before you even roll the dice. The power imbalance is just stark and unyielding.
So the screen becomes the only place you can actually win.
Precisely. What we are witnessing in these viral revenge dramas is not a public outcry for a fairer system. That is a vital distinction to make.
Wait, explain that. What do you mean?
The fantasy being consumed by millions of people is not, I wish we had a transparent, egalitarian society. The fantasy is, I wish I had the absolute unquestionable power to crush those who stepped on me.
Oh, wow. So they don't want to dismantle the pyramid. They just want to instantly teleport to the top of it.
Exactly. It is a desire to move from the bottom to the top without changing the structure of the game itself.
It's the difference between wanting to build a democracy and wanting to become the emperor.
That is a perfect way to put it.
But let me push back on this for a second, because I'm thinking about the real-world impact.
Yeah.
If you are consuming a daily diet of this destroy or be destroyed content, where the only path to respect is brutal dominance, doesn't that rewire your brain?
Oh, it absolutely has a psychological impact.
Right, because we aren't just venting pressure here. We are actively reinforcing a super-specific worldview.
And that brings us directly to cultivation theory in media psychology. Cultivation theory basically suggests is that long-term, continuous exposure to specific media narratives subtly but profoundly shapes how viewers perceive the real world.
So if you watch revenge all day, you start seeing the world as a revenge plot.
Sort of. Now, the media doesn't create the hyper-competitive society out of thin air. I mean, the immense pressure of modern economic survival does that. But the media amplifies a mindset of scarcity anxiety.
Scarcity anxiety. Like there's not enough pie for everyone.
Exactly. It tells the viewer that resources, respect, and safety are a zero-sum game. If someone else is winning, you are losing. Period.
Man, that sounds exhausting.
Yeah.
It romanticizes this wolf-like aggression over, cooperative, community-based problem solving.
It does. It validates the aggression.
Okay, so the screen acts as a magnifying glass for our rawest survival instincts. But let's look at a thematic contrast. What happens when a society takes that exact same hyper-competitive environment, but instead of attacking outward, the culture demands that you compress everything inward?
Ah, yes. Now we are moving to Japan.
Exactly. Japan and the search for unconditional bonds in a read-the-air culture.
The divergence here is just sociologically fascinating. Japan is basically a masterclass in the psychological toll of collective harmony.
You see it immediately in their visual language. Like if you look at the massive international hits, especially the anime and films by directors like Makoto Shinkai.
Oh, his work is absolutely breathtaking, but very melancholic.
It's super melancholic. The world isn't depicted as violently oppressive like in the Chinese dramas. It's depicted as emotionally suffocating.
Right, it's very quiet.
You see these endless shots of train crossings, gray skies, rain hitting the pavement, and the protagonist is usually just staring out the window of this pristine, quiet classroom, carrying this profound, heavy alienation.
Yes, the aesthetic of isolation is incredibly strong.
But salvation never comes from discovering secret wealth, right? It never comes from fighting the government. Salvation comes from a single, world-defying connection.
Yes. It is the concept of kizuna.
Kizuna. I like how that sounds. What does it mean exactly?
It translates to an unbreakable bond with just one other person who truly sees you. And to decode why this is so powerful, you have to understand the foundational sociological mechanism of modern Japan, which is meiwaku.
Meiwaku. Okay, unpack that for us.
Meiwaku is the deep-seated, internalized fear of causing trouble or being a burden to others. Due to Japan's history as a highly densely populated island nation, one that has had to collectively survive natural disasters for centuries, community cohesion is prized above literally all else.
So you have to be part of the group to survive the earthquake. That makes sense historically.
Exactly. From infancy, the ultimate societal mandate is to conform, to blend in, and to read the air. The Japanese term is kuki yomenai, or KY.
KY. Like referring to someone who can't read the mood of the room.
Right. Failing to read the air is a severe social offense. You are expected to just know.
But man, the mental bandwidth required to constantly read the air must be absolutely exhausting. You are tasked with intuitively knowing what everyone around you wants without them ever saying it out loud.
It creates an immense cognitive load. People are constantly self-monitoring. And the tragic irony here is that while you are surrounded by 37 million people in the greater Tokyo area, you can experience a level of social isolation that is practically paralyzing.
Because everyone is executing their societal role perfectly, but no one is actually connecting.
Yes. Which brings in the dichotomy of Han and Taipei. Han is your true, raw, unfiltered feeling. Taipei is your public facade, the polite mask you wear to maintain the harmony of the group.
Oh, this makes so much sense now. This is exactly why their media looks the way it does.
Because the media provides the release valve.
Right. The ultimate catharsis in Japanese cinema isn't saving the universe. The absolute tear-jerking climax is finding just one human being on the entire planet to whom you can show your Han.
It's the fantasy of finally taking that heavy Taipei mask off and not being rejected for it.
And that single bond is often portrayed as being worth sacrificing the entire world for. I mean, in so many of these anime narratives, the protagonist will literally let a city flood or let the world fall apart just to save the one person who understands their true self.
Which is a total massive rejection of the collective that has oppressed them their whole lives.
I often think of Japanese society as a perfectly manicured bonsai tree.
Oh, that's a really interesting analogy.
Think about it. When you look at a bonsai, it is undeniably beautiful. It's peaceful, it's harmonious, but to achieve that aesthetic perfection, the gardener has to wire the branches, clip the leaves, and aggressively restrict the roots.
The plant is constantly being forced into a predetermined mold.
Exactly. So the anime, the manga, the cinema, that is the only place the branches are allowed to grow wild. It is the designated psychological breathing room for an entire culture.
That captures the dynamics so perfectly. The physical society demands absolute restrictions, so the digital and cinematic society allows for boundless emotional overgrowth.
Now let's move across the sea to an island that faces intense pressure, but they process it in an entirely different way. Let's talk about Taiwan.
Taiwan has a very unique media ecosystem.
They really do. Looking at what Taiwanese audiences consume locally, they aren't looking for the aggressive revenge of China, and they aren't looking for the hyper-dramatic romance of Japan either.
No, they gravitate towards something much more grounded.
Right. It's slice of life, workplace realism. Shows like The World Between Us or Workers. It's this very specific storytelling about ordinary people just trying to pay rent, surviving cram schools, riding their scooters through the rain.
And dealing with all that heavy family drama.
Yeah, exactly. And what defines this media is its tone. It is a gentle realism, but heavily laced with a very specific self-deprecating Taiwanese humor.
And to understand why this is their cultural defense mechanism, we have to look at Taiwan's geopolitical and economic reality. Taiwan exists in what we could describe sociologically as a stuffy or muffled state.
Muffled is a good word for it. They are living under the shadow of a massive, unchangeable geopolitical question mark.
Exactly. You have giant global superpowers posturing over your island constantly. And as a citizen, you have zero control over that macro narrative.
None at all. You just have to go to work and ignore the warships.
Right. And when you combine that macro uncertainty with the micro reality of the domestic economy, like astronomical housing prices, long periods of wage stagnation, the grand narratives of conquering the world just feel hollow.
They feel absurd. You cannot punch your way out of a geopolitical standoff.
And you certainly cannot easily hack a housing market that has priced out an entire generation.
So the cultural response to these giant, unfixable problems is to intentionally shrink the world down to a manageable size.
You focus entirely on the micro world.
Yes, you focus on the neighborhood level. The fantasy isn't escaping reality. The fantasy is finding warmth and grace within a flawed reality.
It's a very beautiful sentiment, honestly.
It is. The ultimate sanctuary isn't a secret billionaire's mansion. It's sitting on a cheap plastic stool at a night market. eating a bowl of braised pork rice with people who share your struggles. Humor just becomes this ultimate shield against the crushing weight of history.
This is a profound form of resilience. It's a true grassroots survival strategy. But, to see the opposite end of the spectrum regarding systemic pressure, we really have to look at South Korea.
Oh man, South Korea. Because South Korean media has become a dominant global force recently.
It has taken over.
Right.
And their mechanism of compensation is pure, unfiltered rage against the machine.
South Korea is so fascinating to me because they take the same economic pressures as Taiwan, the high housing costs, the wage issues, but they turn it into a literal blood sport on screen.
Yes, just look at global phenomena like Squid Game or Parasite.
They don't shrink the world down to a night market. They attack the system with an axe.
They absolutely do. South Korean media is driven by the terror of failure in a society that lacks a robust safety net.
Which is crazy because they are so wealthy.
They are, but South Korea's economic miracle was built at breakneck speed, largely driven by chaebols.
Chaebols. Those are the massive corporate conglomerates, right?
Right. Massive, family-owned industrial conglomerates that control a staggering percentage of the national GDP. Because the economy is so top-heavy, the funnel to success is terrifyingly narrow.
So if you aren't in the club, you're basically out in the cold.
Exactly. This creates a hyper-competitive educational bottleneck, epitomized by the Sunom, the National University Entrance Exam. One single test can dictate your social standing, your marriage prospects, and your lifelong wealth.
That is so much pressure for an 18-year-old. And if you slip, like if you fail that exam or if your small business goes under, the perception is that there is nothing to catch you.
You just free fall into poverty. That anxiety of the free fall is exactly what you see on screen. South Korean cinema acts as a visceral, aggressive critique of late-stage capitalism.
Like in Squid Game. The characters are deeply in debt, marginalized by the economy, and the show turns their financial desperation into a life-or-death game for the ultra-rich.
It is a manifestation of the I cannot afford to lose universe. The compensation isn't just surviving, it's exposing the horrific moral bankruptcy of the systems that forced them to fight in the first place.
It's incredible. You've got China dreaming of becoming the boss, Japan dreaming of finding a soulmate to hide with, Taiwan dreaming of a warm meal with friends, and Korea screaming that the entire game is rigged.
The geography of anxiety maps perfectly onto their screens.
It really does. Okay, let's take a massive leap. Geographically and culturally, we are moving into Section 2, the Americas.
Here we encounter the absolute extremes of individualism and identity.
We really do. And we have to start with the United States. The land of the lone wolf navigating the collapse of institutions.
This is perhaps the most universally recognized cinematic trope in the entire world, the American action hero.
We know it by heart. The formula is practically holy text in Hollywood, whether it's taken John Wick, Die Hard, or just the endless stream of superhero movies.
The inciting incident is always deeply personal.
Always. A daughter is kidnapped, a wife is threatened, or, in John Wick's case, a dog is killed.
Don't mess with the dog.
Never mess with the dog. So the protagonist goes to the local police, and the police are totally useless. Then they go to the federal government, and the bureaucrats are either tied up in red tape or actively colluding with the villains.
Right. The system is always fundamentally broken.
Always. So the individual, usually a retired operative with, a very particular set of skills, has to step outside the boundaries of the law, arm themselves to the teeth, and dismantle an entire international syndicate single-handedly.
If we unpack the cultural DNA of this narrative, we are looking straight at the American frontier mythology.
The cowboy riding into town.
Exactly. It's the cowboy mentality, the concept of manifest destiny, and the historical reliance on self-defense that birthed American gun culture. The underlying sociological engine driving this trope is a profound, deeply entrenched distrust of the state and centralized bureaucracy.
It's the ultimate systemic anxiety. Like when I'm stuck at the DMV for 3 hours, part of me gets it. In the American subconscious, there is a lingering belief that when the chips are down, the system will fail you.
The institutions are not your protector. They are an obstacle. You are entirely on your own.
And while that makes for thrilling cinema, I love John Wick, we have to examine the real-world consequences of this media diet.
We really do, because when a society endlessly consumes narratives that insist justice can only be achieved through individual force, it actively accelerates the decay of civic participation.
It's like that sociological concept. Bowling Alone.
Yes, Robert Putnam's Bowling Alone. It promotes a highly isolated, paranoid form of individualism. People begin to genuinely believe that the only way to protect their core unit, the nuclear family, is by pulling up the drawbridge.
Relying on personal firepower instead of, like, community building or voting.
Right. They abandon the slow, unglamorous work of reforming civic institutions.
Okay, but I have to push back here. Because isn't this exact same rugged individualism the actual engine of American exceptionalism?
How do you mean?
Well, we are taught that self-expression, individual liberty, and challenging authority are our fundamental superpowers.
Oh.
I express, therefore I am. That's the exact psychological profile that drives startup culture.
That is a very fair point.
The whole move fast and break things ethos of Silicon Valley is essentially just John Wick in a Patagonia vest. You know, you see a broken system, you ignore the rules, and you build a new one yourself.
That is a brilliant point, and it perfectly highlights the double-edged sword of the American psyche. You are absolutely right that this unyielding belief in the sovereignty of the individual is the mechanism that drives American innovation.
Right. When you aren't afraid to challenge the system, you invent the future.
However, and this is a big however, the sociological shadow of that mentality is the current landscape of intense, unyielding culture wars.
Oh, yeah. The culture wars are everywhere.
When everyone has been trained by their media to view themselves as the lone, righteous hero in their own movie, compromise becomes synonymous with weakness.
Or corruption. If you compromise, you sold out.
Exactly. You get severe societal fracturing. Everyone is shouting their individual truth at maximum volume, but the civic bridges required to maintain a cohesive society are just left to rot.
Wow. We are literally a nation of 330 million lone wolves, all looking for our lost dog, wondering why the roads aren't getting paved.
That is tragically accurate.
It's a staggering realization. But hey, sitting right on top of this loud, individualistic hegemon is a neighbor with an entirely different set of anxieties. Let's look at Canada.
Canada is a fascinating foil to the U.S.
We always joke about how many massive Hollywood stars are actually Canadian Ryan Reynolds, Ryan Gosling, Keanu Reeves. But what does actual Indigenous Canadian cinema focus on?
The core anxiety of Canadian media provides a really stark contrast to the United States. While the U.S. is obsessed with individual power, the Canadian collective unconscious is wrestling with cultural marginalization and identity.
Explain the mechanics of that. How does living next to the U.S. change the media you produce?
Imagine living in a quiet apartment, and right next door is a massive rock star who throws loud, explosive parties every single night and broadcasts their life to the entire globe.
You'd never get any sleep, for one.
Right. The sheer volume of American cultural hegemony easily drowns out Canadian narratives. Furthermore, Canada features a highly multicultural, incredibly diverse immigrant population spread incredibly thin across one of the harshest land masses on Earth.
So they are dealing with a totally different existential threat.
Exactly. Therefore, Canadian media isn't asking the loud American question of who do I punch to save my family? It is asking a much quieter question. Who am I, and where do I fit in this vast emptiness?
So while the American hero is blowing up a building to change the world, the Canadian protagonist is just trying to figure out their place in the world before they freeze to death.
Metaphorically or literally?
What does that look like aesthetically on screen?
You see it in the pacing and the visual language. If you look at acclaimed Canadian directors, like the early films of Denis Villeneuve or David Cronenberg, they are characterized by cold, desolate, overwhelming landscapes.
Nature isn't a playground there.
No, nature is not something to be conquered like in the American frontier myth. Nature is an indifferent, massive force that isolates you. The themes revolve heavily around physical or psychological alienation.
The characters often exist in cultural gaps, right? In struggling small towns or in the margins of society.
Yes. It's a quiet, introspective struggle exploring the intense tension between belonging to a community versus profound isolation.
The environment itself enforces the kind of existential naturalism that is so distinct from the American superhero stuff.
It really is night and day.
Let's keep this global analysis moving. We are entering Section 3 Europe and the global periphery. Here, we move away from North American individualism and look at history, fatalism, and what we are calling the human laboratory.
And we really have to start with Spain for this one.
Absolutely. Because over the last several years, Spanish cinema and television have executed a complete takeover of global streaming platforms.
The global resonance of Spanish thrillers is basically a masterclass in translating local economic trauma into universal entertainment.
It really is. Think about massive hits like Money Heist or movies like The Platform and The Invisible Guest. The narrative formula is incredibly specific.
They love trapping people.
They do. They take totally normal, everyday people, teachers, students, office workers, and they trap them in these extreme, high-concept, claustrophobic situations. And then, as a viewer, you just sit back and watch their morality completely disintegrate.
They betray each other, dark secrets are weaponized, and the polite social order violently collapses.
To understand why Spanish audiences craved this narrative, we have to look at the devastating aftermath of the Euro debt crisis.
Spain's economy was hit with catastrophic force during that time. At its peak, youth unemployment hit a staggering 40%.
40%.
Yeah.
I mean, that isn't just a recession. That is the structural deletion of an entire generation's future.
Precisely. Imagine doing everything society told you to do. You study hard, you get your university degree, you follow all the rules.
And then you graduate and nothing.
Exactly. You find that the economy has absolutely zero space for you. The housing market is inaccessible, wages are decimated, and the older generations are clinging to whatever wealth remains.
This caused a total systemic disillusionment with the capitalist structure and the entrenched social class system. The social contract was essentially broken.
So when the system fails that spectacularly, polite society feels like a lie.
Yeah, why be polite if you can't even buy groceries?
Right. And we must layer this economic trauma over Spain's deep historical trauma, the legacy of the Spanish Civil War and the long shadow of the Franco dictatorship.
This is where it gets really dark.
It does, because after Franco's regime ended, Spain underwent the Pacto de Olvido, or the Pact of Forgetting. It was an unspoken and sometimes legal political agreement to not prosecute the crimes of the dictatorship in order to smoothly transition to democracy.
Wait. So they just legally agreed to pretend decades of trauma and division didn't happen. You can't just legislate forgetting. The trauma just goes underground.
And that is exactly what happened. You get a collective consciousness that is deeply familiar with suppressed chaos.
The society knows intimately what it feels like to have a polite, functioning surface with a boiling volcano of unresolved tension underneath.
Therefore, Spanish thrillers serve as psychological laboratories for class exploitation and moral decay.
Like in The Platform, where people are literally trapped in a vertical prison, fighting over scraps of food passed down from the upper levels.
It isn't just a gory thriller. It's a direct, furious metaphor for trickle-down economics and the evaporation of resources.
When real-world survival space is compressed, audiences have this dark desire to see the absolute chaotic baseline of human nature exposed. They want to strip away the polite illusions and see what humans will actually do when the food runs out.
And uniquely to Spain, this is often mixed with a very dark, absurd, tragic humor. It is a passionate fatalism that says, the world is collapsing, so we might as well laugh at the absurdity of our own darkness.
It is brilliant, dark, and deeply cathartic. They are pressure testing humanity on screen.
That's a great way to summarize it.
Now, we need to balance this out because we have Sip&Talkers listening from all over the world. Let's do some quick deep dives into the global periphery to see how other massive populations process their reality. Let's look at India. Bollywood is an absolute juggernaut.
It's massive. And in Indian cinema, despite the incredible vibrancy, the explosive colors, the musical numbers, there is often a profound underlying current of fatalism.
Really? Because it looks so joyful on the surface.
It is joyful, but the sociological framework of India involves massive systemic hurdles. Stark class divides, bureaucratic friction, and the historical weight of destiny and karma. The narrative frequently acknowledges that the world is inherently unfair and the system cannot be easily overthrown.
But the characters don't succumb to nihilism, right? Think of massive global hits like Dangal or Three Idiots.
Right, because the cultural compensation isn't about destroying the system like we saw in South Korea, and it isn't about taking individual revenge outside the law like in the United States.
So what is the heroism?
In India, the ultimate cinematic heroism is pushing forward, enduring the immense hardships of fate, and achieving success specifically for the collective, usually the extended family.
So the family is the fortress against fate.
Exactly. The triumph is in the resilience of family bonds against insurmountable odds. The spectacle of the musical numbers itself acts as a necessary, joyful counterbalance to the heavy grind of daily survival.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, what about the opposite end of the economic spectrum? Let's look at the Nordic countries. Sweden, Norway, Denmark. These countries consistently rank at the absolute top of the Global Happiness Index.
They have incredible social safety nets, free healthcare, subsidized education.
So what could they possibly be anxious about?
This brings us to a fascinating application of Maslow's hierarchy of needs on a macro-societal level. In highly affluent, stable welfare states where the government efficiently takes care of basic survival, the societal anxiety shifts from the physical to the philosophical.
So when you don't have to worry about surviving the winter or paying for surgery, what keeps you up at night?
Existential dread. The collective anxiety shifts from how do I survive in this brutal system to I have absolutely everything provided for me, my life is perfectly comfortable, so what is the point of my existence?
Oh my gosh, and that perfectly explains the explosion of Nordic noir.
Exactly. Nordic noir is defined by incredibly bleak, slow-paced, atmospheric crime dramas. Visually, everything looks perfect. Beautifully designed minimalist homes, pristine, snowy landscapes.
Like an IKEA catalog, but someone is dead in the living room.
Pretty much. Beneath the surface, the characters are wrestling with deep internal emptiness, isolation, and quiet despair. We also have to factor in Janteloven, or the Law of Jante.
What is that?
It is a deeply ingrained Scandinavian sociological code that essentially dictates you are not to think you're anyone special or that you're better than us.
Oh, wow. So it creates social equality, but it dampens individual ego.
It can crush individual exceptionalism. It creates a flat, sometimes suffocating societal ceiling. When perfection is the baseline and standing out is frowned upon, the brain turns inward to explore its own darkness.
When survival is guaranteed, the search for profound meaning becomes the new battleground. That is wild. Okay, really quick, let's look at Germany and Russia. How does the weight of history shape their screens?
In Germany, we see a media culture heavily anchored in Vergangenheitsbewältigung.
That is a very long word.
It's the process of working through and overcoming the past. The societal deficit isn't necessarily economic. It is a burden of collective guilt and moral accounting.
Like in the movie The Lives of Others.
Exactly. The cultural anxiety is the fear of moral slippage, and the compensation is constant, vigilant self-reflection.
And Russia.
Russia presents a different kind of fatalism. Geographically massive and historically subjected to brutal winters, invasions, and sweeping state changes, Russian media often reflects the endurance of the individual against massive tides of time.
The individual is rarely the agent of systemic change. They're just a leaf on the river of history.
Right. The cultural compensation is the romanticization of deep, soulful suffering and the sheer capacity to endure the unendurable.
This brings us perfectly to Section 4, the grand synthesis. If we take all these pieces, the revenge of China, the isolation of Japan, the fatalism of Spain, the lone wolf of America, and we put them together, we form a complete psychological map.
Yes, we are looking at the global hierarchy of cinematic needs.
And if we pull all the way back, there is one overarching, unifying global anxiety that defines the 2020s across all borders.
Institutional decay.
Institutional decay, meaning the grand structures that hold society together are crumbling in the eyes of the public.
Precisely. Across the board, whether you are in a developing nation or a hyper-advanced welfare state, people feel that the grand narratives, the legal systems, the governments, the massive corporations are fundamentally failing to protect or provide meaning to the individual.
And because these macro systems are failing, humanity is universally retreating. We're pulling up the drawbridges.
We really are.
In America, they retreat to the nuclear family. In Japan, they retreat to the one-on-one bond. In Taiwan, they retreat to the neighborhood corner. Everyone is retreating to the smallest, most defensible safe unit they can find.
What is truly fascinating here is that this entire phenomenon stems from a modern, pervasive crisis of agency. Throughout human evolution, we evolved in small tribes where we knew our exact place and our exact impact.
But today, we live in a globalized digital world where we have endless consumer choices, but zero actual power over our destinies.
You cannot control the global economy or geopolitical shifts. We have infinite choices, but immense powerlessness.
So we go to our screens to simulate agency. We watch someone else wield the power we lack.
Exactly. And we can map this into a literal ladder of media compensation. At the base, audiences watch for survival and family endurance. Moving up, in hyper-competitive bottleneck societies like China and South Korea, audiences watch for success and respect.
Then you move to places like Canada, watching for identity to figure out who they are. The U.S. watches for individual power. And at the very top of the pyramid, The Nordics watch for meaning.
It is the ultimate sociological mirror. The screen absolutely does not lie about what we lack.
My goodness, the time just completely flew by today. This session of Sip and Talk was an absolute explosion of information. We went from Taiwan's grassroots humor to China's wolf nature counterattacks to America's consequence-ignoring individualism.
And Spain's fatalistic thrillers. It was so much to process.
The final takeaway to remember is that the absurdity and brilliance on our screens are never just random. Global audiences are actively searching for their own collective painkillers.
Collective painkillers. That is the perfect way to phrase it.
So to you, the individual listening right now, which of these regions hit closest to home for your own life? Are you feeling the American lone wolf vibe?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe that Nordic existential dread? Let us know in the comments.
We always look forward to seeing where you want to take the conversation next.
And before we go, an enthusiastic reminder. You absolutely need to head over and support a loyal friend of Sip and Talk, Mickey. Go subscribe to Mickey's YouTube channel, Mickey to Life. His European Conquest Vlog series is currently airing, and it is fantastic.
Oh, it's seriously so good. You have to go see what hilarious and terrifying thing happened to him right in front of the Berliner Dom.
Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. But before you close the app, I want to leave you with one final thought. If we are constantly receiving our collective painkillers through a screen, are these algorithms actually helping us heal? Or are they just keeping us artificially sedated, trapping us in a loop of digital catharsis so we never actually go out and fix the real world?
Yeah.
Think about that next time the next episode countdown starts. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.